Today on the Big 6 in 60, the Mets fire Carlos Mendoza.
They had to make a change, and Mendy is finally being let go.
What's next for the Hornets after dealing LaMelo Ball?
One of the most, if not the most consequential day in Charlotte Hornets franchise history.
And the Trailblazers introduced their new coach.
Introduced today at the team's practice facility.
This is the Big 6 in 60, the 6 biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big 6 in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Mets moved on from Carlos Mendoza after a rough first half, with Andy Green taking over as interim manager in New York. Ryan Finkelstein with Locked On Mets breaks down where New York goes from here.
Carlos Mendoza being let go as the New York Mets manager. News that comes as a little bit of a shock, even though it shouldn't. I am going to be sending out a link right now on Twitter. I forgot to do that to make sure everybody knows that I'm live. What an interesting time for this to actually finally take place, just because we knew that this should have been on the table, but the Mets have been behind Carlos Mendoza every step of the way. And now finally, after a 6-game losing streak, knowing the Phillies are coming in town and you're going to have a chance to end up with a 9-game losing streak, they had to make a change. And Mendy is finally being let go. Wow. It's a strange one. It really is, because, I knew that this was possible. I knew it made sense for this to happen. I've campaigned for it to happen, and you feel bad for Mendoza because it's so not his fault. I'm not saying that he's not part of the blame. It's just a organizational failure that this guy is now being held responsible for, and rightfully so. But you see the comments from Steve Cohen and David Stern so far. It shows you how much they did not want to do this. David Stearns, this is his boy, right? He doubled, tripled down. He did not want Mendoza to get fired. For all we know, this is a decision that's being made by Steve Cohen, where Steve Cohen's putting his foot down as the owner of the team, as he rightfully should, and saying something's got to give. You can't just continue down this road where this team is playing so tight, making all these errors. It's just an ugly brand of baseball. You have to do something different. So it could have come from the owner, but here's what David Stern says. Carlos Mendoza has led the organization with passion and grace, and is beloved by everyone who works with him on a daily basis. Carlos's impact on our player, staff, and culture over the last 3 years has been transformative. Unfortunately, we know we are falling short and changes necessary to move forward. Doesn't sound like a guy that really wanted this to happen. And here's Steve Cohen. I want to express my deepest gratitude to Carlos Mendoza for his leadership and unwavering commitment. He represented this organization with integrity and dedication throughout. I wish him and his family all the best. Our commitment to bringing our fans a championship caliber team has not changed. There's no sugarcoating it. This season has been a disappointment, and our fans deserve better than what we've delivered. So I appreciate the words from Steve Cohen there, because I do know that it eats him up inside the way this team has failed to meet expectations year over year over year. But Carlos Mendoza was not some great manager. Even though people could have loved them, at the end of the day, you are what your record says you are in this game. And the New York Mets have been brutal for a full year. They had the best record in baseball early last season. They fell apart. They come into this year with high expectations after rebuilding their roster. And yeah, if you had to point a finger right now and say, who's more to blame for where the Mets are at, David Stearns or Carlos Mendoza? It's the guy that put the roster together. I don't think that if Andy Green was manager of the New York Mets on opening day, and we'll talk about Andy Green a little bit more in the next segment because he is the Mets' new manager. If Andy Green had this job from the beginning, are the New York Mets in a playoff spot? Probably not. If Andy Green took over the New York Mets when Don Mattingly took over the Phillies, are they in a playoff spot? Probably not. But would they have been in a better place than they are right now? I also think there's a chance that that's the case, just because when you have a lame duck manager who everybody knows is not going to be back next year, including the players, and if he is as beloved as everyone says he is, and I do think that Carlos Mendoza has those relationships in the clubhouse, I do think the players are going to be legitimately upset that this happened, and I'm sure Cohen and Stearns and everyone who works with Mendoza is upset that this is happening. But if there's one thing to change the vibes and the energy in that clubhouse, to give this team a new lease on life and to start over, this is what you had to do. It's the only change you can make midseason that can inspire a team to just play differently than they have been. And maybe not even inspire, maybe that's not even the right word, but to just change up the negative juju, maybe, right? The cloud that's been following you around, even though it might not be Mendoza's fault. If he is this big energy of just tightness, right? Because he is so frustrated. He is presiding over the team. He's trying to save his job. He's trying to remain the manager of the New York Mets. And you have that running your team, it can just make everybody feel that way. And so it's not fully on Mendoza. There's so many reasons why this team's where it's at. But at a certain point, Carlos Mendoza, as the manager of the team, has to be held accountable. His entire coaching staff last year was held accountable for that collapse. They love Mendy so much, they kept him. I think that was a mistake. I really do. I was surprised they kept him after last season. Because if you were going to fire Jeremy Hefner, who had been with your organization since, 2019? Presiding over your pitching department, and it's gotten a lot worse since he left. If you're going to fire the hitting coaches, justifiable, but still, the base coaches. Now, Antoine Richardson, they wanted him back. They didn't want whatever. It doesn't matter. If you were going to clear house the way that you did, it would have made sense to also hold the manager accountable. It's not often the manager gets to stick around and create a whole new coaching staff around him. And it puts you in this spot where it never quite, it's like it just was never addressed. And it's just kind of this thing where, all right, well, yeah, the coaches were the problem, but Mendoza's there. Just never quite added up. It showed you that, again, Mendoza was really beloved within that organization. But again, you can't just look at the way this team has played baseball and let him off the hook forever. It was becoming too much of a story. It was becoming so much of a talking point after every loss. And the reality is this team has just had way too many poor stretches where they had these 5+ game losing streaks. I mean, this year, I'm curious how many there's been. I'm going to look real quick here. The 12-game losing streak, obviously. But to then now have another one here where they've now lost 6 in a row. I'm looking here, the 12-game losing streak, obviously massive. And then they had another stretch where they lost 5 in a row. And now this one. So yeah, this is the third stretch of 5+ game losing streaks. And you're sitting here with a record going into play against the Phillies on June 26th. We were 34-47, 13 games under 500, 15 games out of a division that going into the season, the New York Mets were projected to win. So it perfectly makes sense to let him go. You feel bad for Carlos Mendoza because you don't think he's a bad guy, but also this is overdue. It is. And quite honestly, I think Carlos Mendoza, this I'm sure is not easy news to process. I'm sure the next 48 hours he's going to have a lot of outpouring of support from his friends and family, and it's going to be kind of a whirlwind. He's going to be sitting with his family on Monday after the smoke clears on all this, and he's just going to be like, I'm so happy I'm not doing that anymore. There's no way that in a week's time he's not relieved, if he's not even already. Because being the lame duck and having to face the media every day and explain why your team is playing so poorly, that could not have been an enjoyable experience. I know it's been miserable because it's been obvious watching him, just like us just watching the games, has been miserable. So for him, he gets to move on with his life, move on with his career. I'm sure he'll end up on a bench at some point next year. At the beginning of next season if he wants to. I don't know about being a manager, but being a bench coach again or taking another role, he'll be all right in the long run. There's a lot of people in the industry that like him. He'll find another job. I don't know if he's going to be managing anytime soon.
The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every match feels like it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal can completely change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. That's what makes tournament soccer so exciting from the opening whistle to the final kick. Now FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match with every goal pays. Bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals mean more bonus bets. All you have to do is turn on your token. That's what I love about these tournaments. You can turn on a match between teams you don't normally follow, and suddenly one goal changes everything. The tension builds so quickly that you're invested before you even realize it, and now you get to benefit from each goal scored. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com now to get started. Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. The Hornets traded LaMelo Ball and are now turning the page to Coby White, who's now back in the backcourt. Doug Branson with Locked On Hornets sorts through a new direction for the franchise.
One of the most, if not the most consequential day in Charlotte Hornets franchise history. LaMelo Ball traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Naz Reid, a 2033 unprotected first-round pick. There are 3 first-round pick swaps in there. There are 3 second-round picks. And then not only that, but we had Coby White sign up for another 3 years of Charlotte Hornets action. So just a massive franchise-altering day. And I wanted to just jump on here live. So I had to work, I work on Yahoo Sports Daily. We're live from 9 to 11 Eastern time. The news broke. We had LaMelo talk scheduled for the second part of our show, and the news broke right then. And so I had to finish up some work for Yahoo, but I wanted to jump on and talk to everyone here and talk through some of this stuff, hit the chat, get my mind right, try to help you get your mind right, if at all possible, after everything that's gone down today. And then Walker and I will jump on. And then actually later tonight, late night, I'm going to get up with Ben Beacon of Locked On Wolves. I think Walker's going to join me for that as well. So we'll do a crossover episode that will probably air tomorrow and kind of get both sides of the deal. A deal that may continue to morph. I think I should start, and we probably will start the episode with Walker and I with some caveats, and some of those caveats have to be, we don't know where this deal is going to truly end up. It seems like the reporting is this deal is going to be moved into the deal that sent Randall to Brooklyn from Minnesota and sent Claxton. Where did Claxton end up? Chicago. So I think this deal could even get larger. There could be other players, other picks, things going in different directions. I think we just have to hold on until, second week of July to see where all the dust settles. And I don't know if the Charlotte Hornets are fully done with significant moves this offseason, because they've opened up some flexibility with this move. They've certainly opened up some gaps in scoring, although signing Coby back up helps with that some. But the other thing that I really wanted, before I dig into the questions in the comments, and the sickos, this is a day to be a sicko, folks. I mean, you're all over it right now in the chat, and so I'm going to probably have to just take some moments to just read. You might have to just look at me read. Maybe I'll try to vamp, but I want to make sure that I get your opinions in here. So this is going to be a little different from what we normally do. But it's a different kind of day. I mean, you're talking about someone, former All-Star in LaMelo Ball, when he was at his peak and healthiest, there were arguments for third-team All-NBA for him, particularly last season. I mean, I thought he should have been third-team All-NBA last season. Missed out on that. Missed out on an All-Star bid 2 seasons ago. When he was at his peak, he was offense-altering, supercharging, was one of the few Hornets who presented a true defensive mismatch. Like, I've got to take my defense and now form it around a LaMelo Ball heat check. But at LaMelo Ball's lowest, he was a constant injury risk, someone that could envelop the offense in his own wild shot making, challenge the team defensively in a lot of ways. This is LaMelo Ball's time in Charlotte wasn't clean cut. It was complicated, and the deal that sends him away ultimately, I think, is complicated as you analyze it. Because I'm not someone that thinks, I saw like Mark Stein put out, oh, this was a what did he call it? A haul. He added another adjective there that like it was an even bigger haul than just a regular haul. It was an abnormal haul. I mean, come on, like 1 first-round pick swaps, which I think I want to dive into, like how important those are. And then the second-round picks. Again, it's all how you view the value. If you're talking about peak LaMelo, or how much are you factoring in the injury risk? How much are you factoring in some of the off-court stuff, which wasn't, the off-court stuff wasn't severe. It wasn't, oh, wow, this guy's going to get suspended for an entire season, or for even suspended, the closest he came was the whole Bam Adebayo trip thing, and that was on the court. It wasn't off the court. But there were distractions. There were marketing issues, with the team. Like, so you can't remove that from the conversation. The reason you can't remove it from the conversation is because I'm sure it was part of the conversations when they were, negotiating these deals. And by the way, this isn't, I should say, like, it's always shocking when a team trades their best, most highest paid player. That's going to be somewhat shocking. But these are not new conversations. These are conversations about LaMelo Ball's potentially getting traded leaked last year. And they, the team had to go through some damage control when those did leak. And so like this, I think this was a situation where you had a desperate team in Minnesota that knew that if they didn't put some talent around Anthony Edwards soon, that could turn them into a contender, that Anthony Edwards was going to turn into the next Giannis Antetokounmpo and want out and, and get to a point where there was a point of no return. And the Hornets, at least this iteration of the Hornets under Jeff Peterson, have been very open to taking advantage of those situations where you have desperate teams. So, but before I get into the comments, I do want to do that. But I do want to just like open up space for people that are feeling hurt right now, because you pour a lot of yourself into this team. You've been through a lot of losing seasons. You get this guy who ends up being rookie of the year, 3rd overall. You luck into the 3rd overall pick. You get LaMelo Ball. People are like, nah, that's not going to work out, kind of trashing it because his last name was Ball and all that came with it. And then he turns into rookie of the year. And then he turns into an all-star. And you're like, oh my God, the Charlotte Hornets have something here. And he's also fun to watch. He's also like someone you buy tickets for. And now that player's gone. And I tweeted, like, I think so. There's a non-insignificant portion of fan anger over star trades because you have jerseys in the closet. You have and then our guy Rod Morrow said, yeah, I bought a bunch of LaMelo t-shirts. Yeah, I've got LaMelo t-shirts in my, I've invested in LaMelo t-shirts. I've invested in tickets to go watch LaMelo Ball. It hurts. It always does. It always does. But at the same time, it hurt when the Hornets moved Larry Johnson. It hurt when they moved Alonzo Mourning. It hurt when they moved Glenn Rice. But those, looking back at those trades, I mean, Alonzo Mourning, a little bit of a different situation in that he forced the Hornets' hand. But the Larry Johnson trade, although in the short term it looked like a bad deal, in the long term it looked like a good situation there for Bob Bass. And when you looked at the return, a lot of people during particularly the Larry Johnson trade looked at the return and said, "Oh, Hornets about to go on a rebuild." They did not like the return. And then, but it worked out and they moved into a different era. This is the first move from Jeff Peterson that feels even remotely risky, that feels like they're putting something on the line. Something I've been wondering about, like when were they going to take a risk? When were they going to push some of those assets into the table? They haven't done that yet. See, I sort of connected those two things. When are they going to take a big risk by using the assets? This is a deal that really you accumulate more assets. Naz Reid, Walker and I will talk. I love Naz Reid. I think he's going to be super impactful for the Charlotte Hornets. I mean, he was a near cult hero in Minnesota. I mean, on the Musa level of cult hero in Minnesota. And so now you are adding that to Musa Diabate. You're adding his shooting. You're adding his, athleticism that doesn't make sense for that position. Somewhat like LJ Light-like in like, ooh, that big body shouldn't move like that. That's cool. Like you're adding, I mean, he is a mismatch. You're adding some of that. Not on the level of LaMelo Ball. Like this is not a 1-for-1 deal. That's why you got a unprotected first round pick.
Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. Mike Inori made his Portland introduction and laid out a hard-playing identity for the Blazers. Mike Richmond with Locked On Blazers goes inside the new era.
Mike Inori, introduced today at the team's practice facility. You're listening to Friday, June 26th program. And on Thursday, June 25th, Mike Inori introduced at the team's practice facility. He laid out his sort of vision for what he sees with this roster, with this team, and as he'll guide it. And yes, he talked about the dumb contract the team gave him. That remains dumb. But it won't be a thing that comes up unless it is. We'll get to the contract stuff. Hopefully this is the last time we talk about it. But, that's life. Let's start with the Nori's vision. Winning the press conference actually doesn't get you anything. But I think Mike Inori was really kind of what you want to hear in the opening press conference, right? Like the results will happen on the court. That's where you actually get the wins. But I thought he was, he's a compelling character, laid out a fairly clear vision, and gave all the answers that you would want to hear. Although I can't recall like an opening since I've been around through the three of these. Stotts and Billups and now Nori. I can't recall like coming away and being like, oh, the comes on the court, right? Like, but Nori was like legitimately impressive and compelling in his opener. I'm just saying like they often are. This is a time for optimism. He was asked sort of first and foremost about how he's going to help this team win, and I thought he gave. In his opening response, and then there was some follow-ups that offered, like, were kind of touched on similar themes, a pretty clear vision of what you can expect of him as a head coach, albeit it could be summed up fairly succinctly as modern NBA basketball. He said, like, not to be cliche, but, playing hard, playing smart for 48 plus. But he mentioned that, recognizing there are some things that we, and he's using the collective pronoun, can clean up. He mentioned not leading the league in turnovers. He mentioned that the Blazers were 21-22 in 2-possession games that in the final 5 minutes, so games in the clutch. And so cleaning up late game execution. He mentioned playing fast, like playing with, if the clock's moving, we're moving. Don't take the ball out of the net and look at the bench for a play call, get it and go. And he mentioned winning the possession battle. That's on the offensive glass, where he said, we're going to crash the offensive glass and get extra possessions. And again, emphasized limiting turnovers. This is modern basketball. Like straight up, this is how NBA teams play now. Teams play fast. Teams crash the glass. We had a whole decade where teams didn't crash the glass. Now it's back. Now everybody crashes the glass. Teams they shoot a bunch of threes and they chase offensive rebounds. And they typically more and more will play some like pressure defense further away from the rim than they have in the past. Like these are modern offensive concepts, right? But I think like the Nori putting a fine point on it, like hitting the specifics. This team led the league in turnovers. We're not going to do that next year. This team, played 43 clutch games. They were 21 and 22. We're not going to do that again. I would say going 21 and 22 in the clutch, or 2 possession games in the final 5 minutes, as he defined it. I think that I would imagine that basically having all those games be roughly coin flips is about right. It's the volume you want to avoid. It's not it is unsustainable to go into games that are within 5 points in the final 5 minutes and like win 65% of them, by virtue of the first 43 minutes informing the final 5 minutes, because like if it was close to the first 43, you're probably about equal teams. Like the most clutch thing you can do is avoid those clutch games. So like cleaning up the late game execution, vitally important. I totally support Nori on that. But the actual trick here is to play like significantly fewer games that are close down the stretch, right? Like that's actually how you avoid it. But again, I totally agree on late game execution. That was a problem. Half court execution, all of those types of things. That was a challenge with this team in the past. And he also mentioned playing a conceptual style. He said there'll be a lot more concepts where it's not just play calls where they're going from A to B. And he mentioned that they'll have play concepts, but it'll be with defined areas and defined moves, defined like sort of roles within the concept. Run wide to the corner, you get to the dunker, create space. We're gonna play quickly and like play this conceptual basketball. That isn't dissimilar from what the Blazers described wanting to do last year and what they hired Tiago Splitter and Patrick St. Andrews to do. What Splitter and St. didn't do is necessarily install that, particularly when Splitter got the head job. Like they did play a fairly conceptual read and react style, but it was very vanilla up front. Like it was set a drag screen and hope Denny gets an advantage. So it's how you implement that specific conceptual style, I think, will be really interesting with Nori. I think almost anyone could be better at designing a half-court offense than Tiago Splitter was last year, because I think he had a philosophy that worked and got them to like stay afloat, and like moving beyond that like stay afloat philosophy just like never really happened with Splitter. I don't think he was a bad coach. I just think it was like implementing a basic Denny go save us offense literally kept the season alive. So like, why fight it to some extent? And then I thought Nori mentioned the turnovers and the 3-point shooting. He mentioned Damian Lillard a lot with 3-point shooting. He mentioned that the team has a lot of defensive versatility, and he likes Donovan Clingan, and he likes the defensive versatility around Clingan. He didn't mention Dame with the turnovers. Dame is a really low turnover guy. If Damian Lillard is able to play 33 minutes a night, and who knows like what he'll be like. I assume I will be blown away if he's not your opening night starter. He is going to be your opening night starting point guard. But like, I don't know, how much they'll run up his minutes and all that. Like we'll see. But like, if he has the ball in his hands and plays like the Damian Lillard of yore, like they'll cut down on turnovers just because he doesn't turn the ball over at the rate that Denny Avdia does, who's always been a high turnover guy and then moved into the point guard role and remained a high turnover guy, even cut down on his turnovers relative to his usage, but is still a high turnover guy. That'll help. He didn't mention Dame with the turnover stuff, but I think that'll help. Shooting, he mentioned like Dame coming back. I think that'll help as well. Albeit like they still need probably more than just Damian Lillard, but like point taken, Damian Lillard will help there as well. He also mentioned, and I thought it was pretty interesting, he was asked about like coaching in the 2024 playoffs. That was when Chris Finch, the Minnesota head coach, tore his patellar tendon, and he was behind. He had surgery, and he Finchie came back fast. He was on that bench fast. I was stunned at how quickly Finch was back behind the bench, but he wasn't moving, right? He was immobile and sitting on the second row. And so Nori coached from the end of Game 4 of the first round up till, I believe, Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals. Like he won the first playoff series, won a second playoff series, got deep into the third, and he did a lot of high level like big chair coaching, albeit like with Finch there to bounce stuff off of, just like in game, right? Like there's Finch was close enough to the bench to help, but you got to make some decisions on your own. You're standing out there by yourself. And Nori had a really interesting response to that. First, he had just a money response. Dude's a talker. Money response. He says, the first thing I learned is as a head coach is you can't major in minors. That's a banger. First Nori banger of his career is in Portland is that one. You can't just major in minors. And so basically what he's saying there is like, you can't micromanage every single thing. You have to get good people around you. This is a quote. You can't micromanage every single thing, Nori says. You have to get good people around you and trust people. And that being said, I told Joe and I told the staff that I've been on staffs where they come in and they just wipe it clean. That's the way they used to do it back in the day. But over the course of working with 13 head coaches, those coaches gave me an opportunity to tell them what I do. Those coaches being the Blazers assistant coaches. So that's what I'm going to do with these guys. So it's like learning from those coaches to bring it to the current staff. That's what I'm going to do with these guys in this situation. This is a playoff team. It's not a team that won 25 or 30 games. So these guys behind us are very, very capable and very, very good. I think one thing, it sounds like the Blazers are going to basically retain everybody. Nate Bjorkgren, welcome back. They're going to have to hire probably at a minimum one more coach. We'll see what they do with that. But like, and whether that's an in front of the bench, like veteran coach, or behind the bench type of sort of younger player development coach, we'll see kind of how they handle that. I would imagine that coach gets paid like $5 an hour and a Jersey Mike's gift card, but it's an opportunity you can't pass up for $5 an hour and a Jersey Mike's gift card. So but I think jokes aside, I think Nori having that knowledge of knowing that you can't micromanage, as in the big chair, you have to be the big picture guy. What's happening on the court? What message needs to be delivered in that moment? What are the big decisions you need to make? And trusting your staff to be on it. They're on the ref saying, "Hey, watch that hook on the rebound." They're on that experience is why you hire an experienced head coach, right? That is the value that Nori brings. Been in the NBA, he said it a bunch of times, 28 years, right? Like he started his coaching journey in 1998 with the Raptors. So he's been in a bunch of roles. He's been on NBA benches, like on front of NBA benches for nearly 20 years, starting in like 2009, maybe a little after that when he got in front of the bench on Triano's staff. But he's been on benches and had major roles and been lead assistants and all these things. Like, this is why you hire someone who's like, he's been there, he's coached at a high level, and he understands what it's like to be a lead assistant, and he's had a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be a head coach, and kind of seen that, said, okay, this is what you have to be. You have to be able to delegate. That's value. That's real value. I think Nori, again, you can't win the press conference, but in terms of you can win the press conference, you just don't get any dubs for it. Nothing goes in the win column. In terms of coming away with a well-articulated, here's what I'm about to do and here's why, I thought he was great. I thought it was an impressive first impression.
Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. Al Horford is returning to Golden State, giving the Warriors another veteran piece up front. Kylan Mills and Chuck Walter with Locked On Warriors explain the fit.
The Warriors appear to be very, very large going into this upcoming season. For the longest time, we've heard gripes about how tiny the Dubs are. This is shaping up to be one of the biggest teams in the NBA currently. In the draft, they draft 6'9" power forward Yaxel Lindeborg. They draft 6'7" guard LeJay Jones. They followed up by bringing back Al Horford on a 2-year contract. So forget the player option. They just instead signed him to 2 years, $14 million. Then they signed Graham Ike to the Summer League squad as an undrafted free agent. I will start there, Kylan, before we get your take on Yaxel Lindeborg. Kylan, by the way, worked at Big Ten Network doing all the pre- and the post-game shows. so she has watched as much Yaxel as anyone. But Graham Ike, he's going to make the team. He's 6'11". He's a unit. Remember I said LJ Cryer would make the team last year? I'll say the same thing about Ike. He's 24. He fits your timeline. He scored over 2,500 points in his collegiate career. He was the third-team All-American. He was the WAC player, the West Coast Conference, I should say, player of the year. Does have an injury history, but he was healthy last year. I just need to know why this guy did not get drafted, because like Yaxel, he has that nastiness to his game, a super high motor, wants to dunk over you, go through you always. He's a competitor. And for the moment, he will be fighting for a roster spot for the Golden State Warriors. Graham Ike. Look him up. Anyways, Kylan, Yaxel Lindeborg, the biggest relief he will provide for the Warriors day one is?
The biggest relief? The biggest relief is the fact that he's going to be an individual who can step in at the wing and forward position, which is a massive need for the Warriors in light of injuries, long-term injuries to Moses Moody and Jimmy Butler. Not only does he step into that role, but he provides some positional size. Yes, he's 23 years old, but he only started playing basketball. He played growing up, but he really didn't play organized basketball on a team until high school. He got cut his sophomore year, didn't have good enough grades to play on the high school team until the last 10 games of his senior year, and then went on to be a star in college. So, I think that the age isn't a concern. I think the biggest relief he will provide is going to be just adding some positional size at the wing and forward position, which the Warriors need in light of injuries. 6'9", 240, 7'4" wingspan, Chuck, is exactly what the Giants have been doing way too many Giants shows, exactly what the Warriors need. And then he's a two-way player. That's my other big positive. He's going to provide relief defensively because he's an extremely versatile defender. In college, we saw Yaxel Lindeborg guard 1 through 5. And we just heard from Mike Dunleavy, who he believes that he could do the same in the NBA. Now, that being said, one of my concerns, or maybe areas for improvement, would be Yaxel guarding much smaller, quicker, shiftier guards that he might face if he guards a 1 through 5 in the NBA. But that being said, he was able to successfully guard any position at the collegiate level. So I think it's huge to add a two-way threat in that way, because the Warriors and Steve Kerr like to emphasize defense, and then he just provides a relief in terms of a position the Warriors have a massive need at. And then I think the age, actually, for me, is a positive because of this timeline. They're working with Steph Curry. They want a young player who can step in and contribute. And I think this is a guy who's rotation ready at a position the Warriors desperately need some depth. I think you're muted.
I'm going to throw you some names, and you're going to tell me whether if Yaxel was switched onto him, you'd feel comfortable. Okay?
Oh, why you got to? All right.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. If he was switched onto Shai, how do you feel he would hold up against Shai?
I think that Yaxel Lindeborg could hold up well against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Granted, he's one of the best players in the NBA. So look, I'm not saying he's going to completely shut him down, but I think, again, the versatility of Yaxel, he has pretty good athleticism. He has size, he has length, and he's not slow. He is not slow. I want to be very clear. He's not slow. He's athletic, and he does have some, lateral abilities. It's just not elite quickness when you talk about elite guards in the NBA, but I think he could handle someone like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Absolutely.
Okay, 2 more names. How about Zach Edey? I just wanted to go with a unit.
Why would you say Zach Edey?
Victor Wembanyama. I'm just talking because you say he can guard 1 through 5. Is there any position or type of player that could give him some issues? Is there, if he gets switched on to Ja Morant, for example, you think he holds his own against Ja? Is he just an elite defender against anyone, essentially?
Yeah, elite defender, I think, is taking a little bit far. I just think the versatility is elite in and of itself. Good instincts defensively. He did a great job in college at using his length to disrupt, to get out in passing lanes. He has good block numbers, although I don't think he's an elite rim protector, just because he has a good feel for the game, good anticipation, plays with physicality, again, has size, length, and athleticism, has the right combination with enough of each to where he can challenge players of all different positions. Do I think he could guard someone who's 7 feet? Yes, I do. I think he could disrupt that individual despite that person having several inches on him, whether it's a Zach Edey. Victor Wembanyama obviously is a unique specimen, but that's the point where some of these stretch 4s or 5s, I think Yaxel can step out on the perimeter and has the quickness to be able to handle those types of individuals while still having enough size and physicality to be able to at least disrupt in and around the basket some of the bigger players in this league. And that's why he's such a huge asset to the Warriors, is because of that versatility. John Morant actually is one of those that I think would be tough, because John Morant is one of the most explosive, if not the most explosive player in this league. And that's where, like, is there the potential that someone could blow by him with like that high level of quickness? Yes, I think that's a possibility, but I also think that Yaxel will continue to improve as a defender moving into the NBA with more time.
Interesting you brought up John Morant's name, because he is apparently very, very much open for business in terms of a team going out and trading for him. And I'm looking at the Warriors' needs right now after they bring in all this size. I mean, we just talked about 4 positionally big dudes, if they believe in EK as much as I do. And like the Warriors could honestly use someone like John Morant if he just had John Morant's talent from 2022 and none of the other baggage that came along with him. I don't think you can really take that gamble. However, with Jimmy Butler's contract, it's probably possible to do it, because the Grizzlies don't want him on this deal that they have him on. And he is a gamble, but he's
no
definitely...
one wants him on the Warriors with all the issues, Chuck.
No one does. But in a perfect world, if you like squinted hard enough, you see it working, because the Warriors need someone that could take you off the bounce, and that dude does it better than anyone in the game when healthy and when he's not flashing guns all the time.
Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports just as it is in business. The Knicks acquired a bunch of pieces from different teams, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, and got everyone pulling in the same direction. It wasn't just one great player or coach. It was a coordinated effort across the entire organization that made it successful. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. With Bo Nix now driving the offense, Denver believes its Super Bowl window is open. Cody Rourke and Sayer Bettinger with Locked On Broncos lay out that path.
All week long, we've been breaking down how the Broncos can get back to the AFC Championship game in 2026. But now it sets the stage for how do the Denver Broncos get to the Super Bowl? Who are going to be the most important players that can do that? Sarah and I, we're going to go through defensive players that we feel like are drivers for the Broncos' road to the Super Bowl on offense, on defense. But we're going to kick things off by talking about the one guy who's probably the most important needle mover when it comes to that, and that is Broncos quarterback Bo Nix.
There's nobody more important if the Broncos are going to get to and win the Super Bowl this year than Bo Nix. I mean, I know that a lot of folks don't subscribe to the idea that quarterback wins are a stat, but Bo Nix sort of defies that logic, doesn't he? I mean, when it comes to the value that he brings, especially late in games, Cody, I mean, we've already seen 11 come from behind victories, including the playoffs. And, you know, we see it with the playoffs. We've seen it in the regular season. We've seen it against defending Super Bowl champions. We've seen it against the powerhouse in the AFC West. Bo Nix has been that valuable that his 24 wins over the course of his first 2 seasons, tying Russell Wilson, by the way, for the most in NFL history. I think we can effectively say Bo Nix is a major reason why that happened. Yes, football is a team game. There's 22 guys on offense and defense, all your special teams players, all your depth, 53 players on a roster. We get it. Like, it's not like basketball where there's only 5 guys on the court at a time and, you know, one guy can dominate the ball. But Bo Nix at the quarterback position, the most important position in the game, he has proven that he has ice in his veins and that he is bigger than the moment.
And we saw that at Josh Allen showdown against the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs. That game right there for me, Sarah, like remember the high before we found out he had the injury right after that game. But remember how we felt initially. You and I were texting as the game was going and as the game hit double zeros and I was about to go to the locker room. You and I were texting. And I remember one thing you said to me is like, wow, this is a high I have not felt in a long, long time. And the conversations that we were having about, wow, Bo Nix just outdueled Josh Allen and beat Josh Allen in one of the biggest stages of football in the postseason. And all of a sudden, we're like, man, the legend is now starting to write itself. There were a lot of detractors about Bo Nix pre-draft. There were a lot of people saying, hey, this guy's not going to amount to anything. If your team takes him, I'm going to feel sorry for your team. Bo didn't get off to the greatest start, obviously, in his first 4 weeks of his rookie season. But then what did we see? He started to get more confidence. He started to get more comfortable. He started to understand, hey, this is the speed of the game now compared to the college level. We've seen him adjust accordingly. We've seen him rely on his athleticism. A lot of people have talked about his arm. Oh, he doesn't have a strong arm. I think he's put that to the test quite a bit, especially the throw he had to Marvin Mims against the Bengals in 2024 and that overtime thriller that Denver had there. Unfortunately, they fell short in that game. But we've seen Bo and the Broncos go through some of these ups and downs, right? Some of these moments during his rookie season. And we question, okay, can they flip the script? The next season, they did that. Those one-score games, they found a way to win that 14-3. They won 11 straight games. And of course, as you mentioned, it is a team sport. I think a lot of people, there are a lot of false narratives out there. Oh, Bo Nix is just carried by his defense. He's carried by the best offensive line in football. I think a lot of these morons and mouth breathers on Twitter that don't actually watch the games and they look at these little nerd charts and advanced analytics, watch the freaking games, watch what Bo Nix does in moments. I think the one thing that maybe we can all have a consistent gripe on, can Bo get off to hot starts quicker, right? But that's, I think, naturally across the NFL, you look at that. Some quarterbacks get off to hot starts in the beginning and then they fizzle out. You know, in a fourth quarter situation, got to have it. I don't think there's anyone right now that I would trust more than Bo Nix. I think Bo has got that juice. He's got that secret sauce, and that's a big reason. Sarah, think about this too. 24-10 record in his first two seasons, obviously back-to-back playoff appearances for the Denver Broncos, 7,700 yards passing, so 7,706. The thing that stands out to me, 64 total touchdowns for him in just 2 seasons. That's crazy to think about when you factor it in, right? 54 total passing touchdowns in his career. He's got 9 rushing touchdowns. He's got 1 receiving touchdown, which came in his rookie season. Bo is a playmaker. If you look at this Broncos roster, and we saw this, what were we saying after the AFC Championship game? Man, if Bo Nix plays that game, Denver's in the Super Bowl. That's how much of a needle mover that Bo is, that everybody, I'd say unanimously across the league, executives probably felt the same exact way.
That just goes to show that the performance that he put on against the Buffalo Bills earned him some much due respect, I think, from people in terms of what he's capable of doing, not just in a vacuum, but I think like as a player, what he brings to the table every single week. We've seen it now. I mean, 2 straight years of playoff appearances and a tied for the NFL record in the most wins of your first 2 seasons in NFL history. I mean, with the dead cap hit that the Broncos had from Russell Wilson alone, not to mention guys like Justin Simmons and others who carried dead cap. I mean, that's incredible with the way that this team was constructed. So many young guys around him. And that was offensively and defensively, right? That wasn't just Bo Nix's playmakers. It was a lot of the defensive guys like Nick Bonito and all these other players kind of finding their way as well. So, but offensively, especially with the playmakers lacking the way that they have, more drops than pretty much any other team in the NFL over the last 2 seasons, Bo has been able to overcome so much with the dead cap hit, the drops, the inconsistencies in terms of player personnel being on the field. Like, I feel like he's even no run game to speak of. Like, he has been, like you mentioned, the receiving touchdown that he had against Baltimore his rookie season. He's been at times QB1, he's been RB1, he's been wide receiver 1, he's been it all for this Broncos team. And so I think that what's exciting is feeling like entering year 3 that the pressure is not all on Bo. Like, there is pressure always for the quarterback. There is definitely it's the glamorous position. It's the leader of the team, the captain of the team. But in terms of him having to do everything, that has now shifted because you have other players around him who can help him be better. And so I feel very, very strongly that, yes, Bo Nix defies the logic that QB wins is not a stat, because Bo is a primary reason. If you were to look at, like baseball has wins above replacement or whatever, that type of stat, like Bo Nix would be, in my opinion, Cody, arguably up there in the top 2 or 3 guys at the position in the NFL when you factor in everything we've seen for this Broncos team the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, in the last 2 seasons, it doesn't lie. And there can be a lot of people that are going to try to detract and take away from Bo Nix. Going back to one of those myths about he's carried by a really good offensive line. How did that fare in the AFC Championship game? We really saw, I think the reality is, hey, the offensive line works well with Bo Nix because of what Bo Nix does well mobility-wise, athletically. Like, it's just a perfect combination between those guys. And I think we saw that kind of come to the surface in the AFC title game, and it led to a lot of what-if questions. What if Bo Nix was healthy against the Patriots? What if it wasn't Jarrett Stidham that had to go in and step in there? Like, do the Broncos take care of the Patriots? I think they take care of the Patriots pretty easily if Bo was in there. There's just something about it, too, now, Sarah, where it's like if the Broncos find themselves with their back against the wall, there is no question that, hey, like, Bo's done it for 2 years. We think he's going to do it here once again. Now, ideally, you don't want to be in those situations often where you have to come from behind, but we've seen that the Broncos can do that. And Bo is a big catalyst. He's a big driver of that. And I would say arguably right now, Bo Nix is probably the most important player on this roster that is in the driver's seat of getting Denver to a Super Bowl with the talent and the pieces around him.
Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. Terrion Arnold is facing felony kidnapping and robbery charges in Florida, while his side denies the allegations. Matt Derry with Locked On Lions talks through what comes next.
I stayed away until something was going to happen with Terrion Arnold, arrested, charged, something. It was all speculation, rumor, innuendo, and reports. Certainly the Florida police were looking into everything that went on February the 4th. Where Terrion Arnold's friends, 3 men in their late teens, held at gunpoint, battered, pistol whipped, and robbed in a Tampa apartment by a bunch of Terrion Arnold's men and women friends. All of those people have gone to jail. All of those people have been charged. Some have been sentenced. And so last night, Terrion Arnold, Lions cornerback, entering his 3rd season, a very important season for both he and the Lions. Arnold surrendered to authorities Wednesday night, he'll remain in jail, in detention until a hearing on Monday. He was charged today in Florida with leading a plot to detain and pistol whip 3 people whom he believed had stolen from him. Arnold, for 8 felony counts, and could carry a sentence of life in prison. What are we doing here? The victims told police that Arnold's friends lured them to an apartment, held them at gunpoint, and hit them, all while streaming on FaceTime to Arnold. Police said Arnold was giving orders in a group chat and later arrived at the apartment. Terrion Arnold, 6 dangerous crimes, first-degree felonies categorized as dangerous crimes punishable by life in prison, held with no bond, 8 charges. One of the stupidest decisions in the history. Here is a guy. I'm speechless. Here is a guy signed a 4-year contract, got $14 million guaranteed. And his representation, of course, is saying he's innocent. But everybody that was already charged, was already arrested, already sentenced, men and women in the case, are all telling the authorities that Terrion plotted this whole thing. 3 counts of armed robbery, 3 counts of kidnapping, 1 count of conspiracy to kidnap, and 1 count of conspiracy for armed robbery. Why? What are you doing? Allegedly, Arnold is saying, and his people were saying, and his friends were saying, that they had stuff stolen. $250,000 was stolen, reported stolen from Arnold at an Airbnb rental in Largo, Florida, about 20 miles west of Tampa. They thought they were getting the perpetrators back with a little retaliation, but it turned out that the victims of the armed robbery, the 3 men that were pistol whipped with Terrion on FaceTime, had nothing to do with the theft, according to investigators. Arnold was the primary conspirator in the attack, according to police. How stupid can this guy be? And again, I'm trying my best to wait until, innocent until proven guilty. He's being held in jail until Monday. The Lions have no comment, of course. You got Sauce Gardner on Twitter saying Terrion's a great kid and just had a bit, and now he's a new father. And let me read you the exact tweet from Sauce Gardner. Quote, Terrion Arnold is a good kid, and this situation shouldn't define him. He's young. His daughter just got brought into the world. What is daughter going to do without her dad in her life? Me knowing how much of a good, caring person Terrion is makes it hard to believe because he's not the type of person to do these things y'all are reading about. And then prayer hands at the end from Sauce Gardner, of course, Detroit native and Indianapolis Colts cornerback, a friend of Terrion Arnold's. I'm sorry, but I just don't understand. You think you got $250,000 worth of stuff stolen from you and everything else? Call the police. Call the cops. Let them do the investigation. What are you doing? What are you thinking? And I get it. He's 23. He's young. What's the old adage and the old saying? The human brain really doesn't get fully formed until you're 26. I did plenty of stupid stuff before 26. All right? Plenty of dumb stuff early in my life. I got married way too young the first time. But kidnapping, armed robbery, conspiracy, when you have an NFL contract, when you have all of this money, when you've got an opportunity that not a lot of people have, and you're just going to piss it away. This is just, and to be on FaceTime, and there are text messages. Denise White, CEO of EAG Sports Management, an agency that represents Arnold, said, quote, there's no credible evidence against him. Only accounts from others who may have an incentive to get a lighter sentence. 2 of these women, Jasmine Randazzo, 19, was immediately sentenced to 4 years in prison for kidnapping, conspiracy, and robbery with a gun. The victims told police that Arnold's friends lured them to the apartment, so-and-so. And Arnold was the one giving the orders on the group chat and on FaceTime. If the police and the investigators have these texts or group chats, then it's over. And there's your evidence. Of course, Terrion Arnold's representatives and agents are going to say he's innocent. And it did take a long time. 4 months for the authorities to really investigate this thing. 4 months. And finally, last night, police found him. He turned himself in, and now he's going to be held without bond until Monday. 8 felonies. What this means for the Lions, this is terrible. This is a former first-round pick. This is a young player at 23 that the Lions were relying heavily upon. And because the authorities in Tampa waited so long and really did their research and obviously talked to all the other co-conspirators, and they're all throwing Terrion under the bus, it sounds like. Even if he's found innocent and not guilty, can he come back to the Detroit Lions? It'd be very difficult, especially with the culture, especially with this owner and what Sheila has made sure to set as an example and culture for this franchise. Be very difficult to come back from. But it sounds like, everybody's barking that he was the man behind this. And it just makes absolutely no sense. And it's a moronic decision for this young player to make for in his life. Millions of dollars that he has. Yes, you believe you had $250,000 of stuff stolen from you. You're going to be mad. You're going to be angry, everything else. But kidnapping 3 teens, holding them at gunpoint, battering them, pistol whipping them, robbing them, and they're not even the people that stole your stuff, or allegedly. Ridiculous.
That's all for today's Big Six in 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, and on campus, going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA, the Big 3 in 30 NFL, or the Big 3 in 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big Six in 60.